condemned to inhabit the bodies of animals. Although many affirm that, and this is the pronunciation of the Halloween, it's Samhain, was the origin of modern-day Halloween. It is significant to note how many cultures throughout the world have celebrated a Day of the Dead, often with sacrifices occurring at the end of summer or fall. There seems to be too many parallels to call these similar celebrations a coincidence. On this celebration, this one night, they say, the Druids would say, that the veil between life and death was at its thinnest, and the dead could pass through that veil and come into the world of the living, and they would offer sacrifices so that their loved ones would not come and haunt them. Exactly. That's exactly what we would do. And then we, the little bit that we read here, would you call this a good celebration or a wicked one? Right? Now, I read this one sentence. The Druidic belief on the eve of this festival, Samhain, it's S-A-M-A-N, Lord of Death, called together the wicked souls that within the past 12 months have been condemned to inhabit the bodies of animals. So, would you call that good or evil? I would. Number one, you have the Lord of Death. All right? So there's a God, the God of death. All right? And then he would take the wicked souls that were condemned to live where? In animals. All right? Scripturally speaking, what happens? We're going to look at that in just a moment. But scripturally speaking, what happens when you die? You go to one of two places, don't you? One of them is not an animal. I'm just going to tell you. Nowhere in the scriptures does it say we become animals. Oh, by the way, neither does it say that animals become us. Nowhere does it say that. All right, let's look at some of these celebrations, the Day of the Dead. By the way, my wife and I, we were missionaries in Mexico. Mexico celebrates the Day of the Dead. Here's how it works. October 31st is Halloween, All Hallows Eve. November 1st is the Day of the Dead. November 2nd is, I have these two dates mixed up, 1st and 2nd, but All Souls Day. It may be reversed, the 1st and 2nd, but it's still those 3 days. And the Day of the Dead in Mexico, you'd go down to the cemeteries, and they have the above ground cemeteries, so you have all these concrete blocks. Usually they're painted white, and they'll have crosses and things like that on them. And on the Day of the Dead, they'll go and they'll clean those up, they'll repaint them, and then they'll bring sacrifices to them. Now it's not, living or killed sacrifices. It's basically their favorite foods. So you would bring tacos, carne asada, you'd bring things like that. But also a big thing about the Day of the Dead in Mexico was yams. You would go, there would be the cemetery, and then outside of the cemetery there was this whole big area that was set up, and there were taco stands everywhere. But then they would have tables set up and booths set up with yams just stacked up all over the place, and these people would buy yams. And the song that we got, now, do you guys, how old is the church again? How old is our church? We just celebrated 14, right? My wife and I have been out of Mexico for 15 years, and I still remember the song that we got sung to every Halloween night, every Day of the Dead night, and then every All Souls Day night. Yeah, All Souls Day night. Los muertos quieren camotes, si no les dan bigotes. So they would sing to you, los muertos, the dead, quieren, they want, camotes, that's yams. See, no, so if not, les dan, they will give you bigotes. And these are those mustaches like you would see on Speedy Gonzales, the cartoons, those really big cartoon ones. That's the kind they'd give you. So if you didn't have yams, they would slap on you a big old cartoon-like mustache. That's the song that we would be sung. But did you catch the first one? Los muertos quieren camotes. The dead want yams. Probably because the living don't. But that's the way they celebrate down in Mexico. And like I said, they would go to you would see them on that night, and they would be there all night, and they would bring those sacrifices, the favorite meal of the dead, because they didn't want the dead to come back and haunt them. And so if you didn't bring Paco his tacos, he was going to be coming back with you to your house and just banging all over the house at night, hunting you because you did not bring his tacos. And that actually dates back to the Aztecs and the ancient Olmecs in Mexico. And then in Brazil, they celebrate what's called Finados, which is Day of the Dead. Finados, that would be like the end. Bolivia has the Day of the Skulls. In Asia, there are similar festivals. For example, the Chinese celebrate the Ghost Festival, which was a day to pay homage to dead ancestors. The Japanese celebrated a similar thing, something similar called Oban, or merely Ban. Even Vietnam has a variant of the Ghost Festival. In Korea, they have a festival which deceased ancestors are ritualized. In Nepal, there's a cow pilgrimage to honor the recently deceased. In the Philippines, the Day of the Dead, where tombs are cleaned and repainted. The list goes on and on. There's celebrations that go on. Then the custom of lighting Halloween fires survived until recent years in the Highland of Scotland and Wales. In the dying embers, it is usually to place as many small stones as there were persons around. So here's the picture. Each one of us would have a small stone, and we would sit around a bonfire, and as the embers were going out, we would each place our stone in those embers. All right? So you have the picture so far? The next morning, a search was made. If any of the pebbles were displaced, it was regarded as certain that that person represented would die within the next 12 months. So if I wanted to mess with your mind in the night, I would come and pull your stone. I could probably kill you just by suggestion on that. That's what it sounds like. But anyways, that's just some way that's celebrated. And like I said, that's most recently in the Highlands of Scotland and Wales. So do the dead really walk the earth? Can the dead really cross the veil between death and life and come into the land of the living? Are there such things as ghosts? Are there such things as evil spirits? Are there such things as witches and warlocks and ogres and different things like that? Are there such things as these things? And well, let's take a look and see what the Bible has to say. Do the dead roam around after death? So I have you in Luke chapter 16. You should be familiar with this. This is the passage where the rich man and Lazarus both die. So in verse 19, you should be in Luke chapter 16, and then verse 19. There was a certain rich man which was clothed in purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate full of sores, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. And it came to pass that the beggar died and became a goat. Is that what it says? Okay. So he must not have been wicked. Right? Because who was it that inhabited the animals? It was the wicked, was it not? All right. So Lazarus, or the beggar, died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom, or paradise, what would later be taken up into heaven and just become heaven. Then it says the rich man died also and was buried, and he became a goat. Is that what it says? No. And in hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. So again, we just saw what I stated just a couple of minutes ago. When a person dies, they go to one of two places. It's heaven or it's hell. Now, in the Old Testament, and Luke chapter 16 is still considered Old Testament because Jesus hasn't died on the cross and hasn't been raised yet. All right? And so in this, they're still taken to paradise, but like I said, at the resurrection, those 3 days and 3 nights that Jesus was in the tomb, he had grabbed this place called Abraham's bosom or paradise, and he had taken it up to heaven. And now this place is heaven, so when we die, we go directly there. So, answer this question. Are there such things as ghosts? Well, we'd have to define ghost, right? How would you define a ghost? Of a person. That's how I would define a ghost. It would be a dead person whose aura, whose spirit, whose soul still wanders the earth. That's what I would consider a ghost, or define a ghost. So can there be such a thing as a ghost? Can there be such a thing as a ghost? No. Luke chapter 16 says you either go to heaven or you go to hell. So there's no ghosts. Now, can there be spirits? Are there evil spirits and are there good spirits? And how would you define a spirit? Well, I wouldn't call them disembodied because they never had one. In the spiritual realm, exactly. So angels, demons. Yes, there are evil spirits. Can evil spirits manifest themselves in this realm? Yes. All right. Can good spirits manifest themselves in this realm? Yes. What does it say in Hebrews? You better watch out. You might entertain angels unawares. I forget what the first couple words are. But it's along those ideas. So yes, they can pass into this realm. So anything that you might see that would look like a person, that would act like a person, let's answer the question again. Can it be a person or would it be an evil spirit? What do you think? If you see what looks like a ghost, what looks like a person, we've already said that people, when they die, they go to heaven, they go to hell. There's not any other place that they go to. So what would it be that would be that manifestation? What would that be? It would be an evil spirit or a good spirit. Most of the times it would be an evil spirit. And that would be what most people would see. So if somebody would say, "Oh, I do see Paco. He's hunting our house because we didn't get him his favorite tacos." Would that be Paco or would that be an evil spirit? That's an evil spirit. And so there are no such things as ghosts. However, there are spirit beings, demons, beings from the spiritual realm that are coming this way. And what would be their purpose? Deception. If I get you hooked on being a ghost hunter, have you guys seen that TV show? Ghost Hunters. Yeah, they almost never see the ghost. You almost never see the ghost on the show, but they hype it up like, ooh. You know, what would it be that those people are actually running across? It would be evil spirits. Well, that's dumb question number 2. If there's 7 portals to hell, why would you start opening any portal to hell? And so we see here that any ghost would be an evil spirit probably, and it would be for deception. It would get you diverted from following God. Now, if it was a good spirit, would they necessarily come as Paco knocking stuff around in your house because you didn't bring him tacos? Anytime an angel appeared in the Old Testament or the New Testament, what were they, first of all? Yes, but physically, I'm speaking physically. How did they show up? Were they, ooh? They were in a man form, exactly right. Humans, man, exactly. I'm thinking Old Testament when Gabriel showed up to well, not necessarily Gabriel. I think it was Gabriel. Showed up to Samson's mom. I forget what her name is. How did he show up? Yeah, Mrs. Manoah. Mrs. Samson's mom. Didn't he show up as a person and said, "You're about to conceive. It's a Nazirite. You're not to drink any alcoholic beverages. You're not to cut his hair. You're to be pure," so on and so forth. All right, how about the 3 angels that showed up to Abraham? How did they show up? As men. How do we know they showed up as men? Yeah, that's what it says. And by the way, didn't one of them sit down and eat with them? 2 of them took off and one of them sat down and ate. How about the one that showed up with Jacob? Was that a spirit being or was that a man? In the form of a man, a physical being. He wrestled with him. Have you ever tried to wrestle a ghost? You try to, right? And so good angels, good spiritual beings, when they manifest themselves, they manifest usually in the form of a man, and they come with a message. It's the same one, Gabriel, when he came to Mary and then to Joseph in the form of a man. And so that's what we see. And so if we see any kind of spiritual beings or ghosts or anything like that, usually that's an evil one. So should we dress up like ghosts? Should we dress up like them? No. By the way, we're having fun with Talia because Talia, we're driving around in our cars and these people have these ghosts that are, these blow-up things. And she's like, "Oh, these ghosts are naked." What is it that a ghost wears? Well, that's what you would wear to be in the form of a ghost. All right, if it doesn't have a cloak or something, that's just a naked ghost. That was a little fun. What about witches and warlocks? Any such thing? There are some that practice witchcraft. There are some that call themselves warlocks. But where do they get their power from? Do they have it? Or is somebody else or something else empowering them? And that's the answer. Somebody else or something else is empowering them. Would that be a good something or a bad something? Yeah, why would we dress up like witches and warlocks? I'm against Harry Potter. You walk around with a little wand and you cast spells. I'm against that. I'm against that. All right, let's see if they're fun now. You know, we're talking about, are they fun? Would it be okay to just go out and have fun in the image of a ghost, a witch, a warlock? I mean, you can go out as a Marvel character. You can go out as, you know, Batman, Superman, anything like that. That would be a DC character, for those of you who are into that. But is this stuff kind of fun? Well, let's go to Mark chapter 5 and take a look at that. Are you guys familiar with the account of the maniac of Gadara? Well, we'll look at it for just a second if you're not. I still got 7 minutes. By the way, there are goodies in the kitchen. It's like nobody touched any of the goodies from this morning, and so I'll get finished here in a couple of minutes, and we'll just go in the kitchen and touch the goodies. We may not eat them, but we'll touch them. Mark chapter 5 and verse number 1. And they, this would be Jesus and his disciples, came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice, and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. And he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, this is Jesus, What is thy name? And he, the man, answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. Now there was there nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. By the way, before we go on too much further, do you guys know the number of a legion? So I heard one number that's really close. And I've heard all of these numbers. So I'm not going to say any of you are wrong, but the number that I've heard with legion is 144,000. That's what I've heard as a legion. 12,000 times 12,000 is a legion. So how many demons are inside this one man? All right, if it's just one, that's enough. All right, so let's take a low number that I heard. Let's say it's just 1,000. All right, 1,000 demons in one man. Is that still a lot? Is that a good thing or a bad thing for that man? That's a bad thing. And in that country, there was a great herd of swine, and the demons, or the demon, Legion, asked to be cast into the swine. All right, my question is, if you're in the land of Israel and you have the law, what is one of the unclean animals? What is an unclean animal? Right? Swine. What are you doing hurting the unclean animal? All right, so you're not hurting them so that you can sell bacon to the Samaritans or to the Gentiles. because they're unclean. You can't touch them. By the way, they're unclean. Have you ever smelled a herd of swine? I remember one time we were on deputation and we're driving on I-95 on the East Coast. And we get into this one area and it stank. I mean, we're on the interstate doing 65 and it stank. I'm like, that must have been a whole herd of skunks that got killed here, because it was bad. And then we never did get out of it. And it turns out that as we're cruising up 95, and of course trucks are driving a little bit slower than us, and we catch up to this one truck, and we pass the truck, and we notice it's a truck full of pigs. And when we get past the truck, the air got clean. One truck load of pigs stunk up the interstate for miles. It took us a while to catch up to it. And it was bad. I mean, we're rolling up windows. We're trying to put on recirc, but it's already in there. And all you're doing is recycling around the stench. It was bad. No, I didn't want anything to do with pork. When I saw it was pigs in a truck, I was like, well, that's what the outside smells like. I'm glad the inside smells better. So could you imagine what the size of this herd? It says a great herd of swine, does it not, in verse number 11? So if there's, and we're just going to go with the low number, if there's 1,000 demons inside this one guy, let's say Legion is 1,000. If there's 1,000 here, how many swine are there? Probably 1,000, right? Because they're cast out of the man into the herd of swine. Verse number 12, and all the devils besought him, saying, send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea. Oh, and they were about how many? 2,000. They were about 2,000. So if 2,000 swine runs violently down the hill, at least each one was possessed with one. And were choked in the sea. I have to do it. Every time I read this passage, I have to do this. First case of deviled ham. Have you guys ever eaten deviled ham? Yeah, good stuff. Especially you spread it on bread, you put some mustard on there, and But first case of deviled ham. Verse number 14, they that fed the swine fled and told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that was done. And they come to Jesus and see him that was possessed with the devil and had the legion, sitting and clothed and in his right mind. They were afraid. All right, so do you think it's fun? Do you think it's fun to celebrate demon possession? To celebrate ghosts, to celebrate witches, to celebrate, well, the demonic world. Do you guys think that's fun? Do you think this guy thought it was fun while he was possessed? I mean, look at his life, day and night. People would come out to him. They would try to tie him up. They would use chains and fetters. Now, you know what fetters are? That's solid handcuffs. So there'd be a bar here, handcuffs around like this, and they would try to shackle him like this. And what does it say that he did to those things? Well, the chains, in verse number 4, he plucked them asunder. Any of you guys ever break chains? Any of you ever take a chain and just for fun, you take your finger and you just pluck those links apart? That's what he's doing. How strong do you think he is? With legion in him. There's 2,001 people plucking chains apart. And then fetters, those solid iron shackles, the solid ones. What does it say he does to those? Breaks them asunder. breaks him into pieces, no man could tame him. How do you think they tried to tame him? If you were to tame a wild animal, what would be a couple of items that you would have in your hand? A whip would be one, and a chair in the other. Because we've seen the lion tamers, right? And the tiger tamers, and they have a chair and a whip. Right? You ever been hit with a whip? Not fun. So again, his life is not fun. And then always night and day, he was in the mountains and where? In the tombs. Doing what? Laughing and having a good old time. Is that what your Bible says? He was crying and cutting himself with stones. And so that's his life. Do you think that's a fun life? Do you think that's a life that ought to be celebrated? Yeah, me either. I'll tell you the life that ought to be celebrated. Drop down again to verse number 16. And when they that saw it told them, this is the swine going into the sea, how it befell to him that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine, they began to pray him to depart. Oh, wait. Verse number 15. And they come to Jesus and see him that was possessed with the devil and had the legion, how? Sitting and clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Why? One man was able to tame him without a chair, without a whip. Verse number 18, and when he was coming to the ship, he that was possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. Don't you think if he got rid of 2,000 demons inside of you, you'd want to be with Jesus too? I would. What does Jesus say? Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but saith unto him, Go to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. And he departed and began to publish. Could you imagine this demoniac of Gadara getting a haircut? He probably had a wild old mane. And he probably walked into the barber shop and he said, hey, I need to have a shampoo and a haircut. And could you look at could you think on the barber for a second, looking at him. Aren't you the guy that was up on the mountains yelling and screaming? Yep, that was me. Aren't you the one that was naked and cutting himself and plucking chains? Yep, that was me. You remember that one time a couple years ago I came up there with a whip and a chair and tried to tame you? Nope, don't remember that. And the barber asked him, what happened to you? How is it that you're here in my barber shop wanting to get your hair washed and cut? What happened? Think of his answer. I ran into Jesus. And then once he leaves the barber shop and he's clean, his hair is clean and it's cut and he's clean shaved, and he's still got on these nasty clothes or borrowed clothes, so he walks into the men's warehouse. And he goes in there and he says, hey, I need a new suit of clothes. And they look at him. Man, you look familiar to me. Wait a second, aren't you so-and-so that was up in the mountains in the tombs cutting himself and plucking chains asunder? Do you remember a couple years ago I came up there with a chair and a whip? Nah, I don't remember that. Well, what happened to you? Same answer. I ran into Jesus. And he took those demons out of me. And now I'm in my right mind, and I went and got my hair washed and my hair cut, and I'm clean shaved. Now I need some clean clothes. And then he gets his clothes and he walks home. Mom, Dad, I'm home. Who do you think were the ones out there with the whip the most often? Mom and Dad, because they wanted their son back. Son, what happened? We were just up there yesterday. You're different today. What happened? Well, let me tell you, I ran into Jesus. So he did exactly what Jesus told him to do in verse number 19. Go home and tell thy friends. Tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee. So is this something that we ought to celebrate? This evil spirit thing? Certainly not. I am not for celebrating Halloween. I'm not so much against it that I'm not going to let the world come to I'm not going to not let the world come to my door and I give them the gospel. Now, it might sound hypocritical, but I am not going out and I am not celebrating and I am not decorating and I am not doing anything. But if the world is going to come to my door, you know what my responsibility is? To get the gospel to them. And so here's what we do. We make up little baggies with candy in them, but we put a tract in every single one of them. We don't just pass candy out. We do give candy and a tract. And on the back table, we have some chick tracts. They're little comic book tracts called Charlie's Ants. And it's about a little boy trying to warn an anthill that rains are coming and it's going to drown him out. And he's trying to figure out how to communicate with ants. And so he figures out, if I become an ant, I can go into the anthill and I can tell them that there's a coming and they need and how they can be saved from this coming flood. Does that sound like anybody else to you? How do you think God was going to come down to us and tell us that there's a coming judgment? He became a man, came down to the anthill, and is warning us that there's a time coming when we're going to die and we're going to end up either in hell or judgment. And so that's what's in that tract. And so we always, on Halloween night, we make up maybe 20, 30 bags, and we put tracts in them. And the world comes to us, and we pass them out. Now, if this is you now, all right, that's what we do. As the pastor of this church, I am not saying that's what you need to do. As the pastor of the church, I'm saying that's what I do. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that and you just want to turn off your porch light, that's what you do. If you have a problem with any part of Halloween, then don't do anything. And if you don't have a problem with celebrating Halloween, just don't come and brag to me about it. If you don't have a problem putting up skeletons and ghosts and witches and, whatever on your yard, just don't tell me about it. Because I'm going to say, well, you just heard me on Sunday night. You know how I feel. And so my advice is abstain from all appearance of evil. Everything about Halloween celebrates evil. And so just abstain from that. Like I said, if you feel like your kids are going to miss out on getting candy, you can dress them up like little princesses or little princes on another day and have them walk through your living room and you buy, put candy in a bag or something. If it's about candy. But I certainly would not celebrate Halloween. As a church, we won't have fall festivals on Halloween. As a matter of fact, I'm not good with having a fall festival anything on the same week. If we want to do a fall festival or something, it can be the 1st of October, it can be the middle of November, but it's not going to be right around this time. Because you guys know how I am. There's this mud and there's this stick and, you guys know. Abstain from all appearance of evil. I'm not going to do trunk or treat either. All right? Some churches do trunk or treat for a safe environment. You know what's safe? Is your house and not out there. So I'm not for trunk or treat either. So as a church, as long as I'm pastor and as long as I'm in my right mind, we won't do a trunk or treat. Why? Again, we're kind of celebrating these kinds of things. All right? I'm done. Any questions or comments about anything that I brought up?